the EDA license cost. That's where I was able to spend. I know you have a lot of stats on this very topic. Please go on. Sorry, I thought I was going to talking.
So interesting because when you start using these AI platforms, one of the things that you don't see is lack of consistency between these platforms. So I'll read out some stats that one of my engineers did sometime last week. He ran a very simple query. He said, so we are involved in a particular customer's project. He read the spec and that's a final spec, as in, as close to detailed spec that you can get. That spec and the verification plan that was manually created, and that's the plan of record. This is how we're going to verify this design. He read the two things in and asked one of the AI platforms, and I'm not going to name anyone particularly, but one of the platforms, and said, can you grade my verification plan in terms of its completeness? Right? And it gave a number. And we thought that was an interesting statistics. So I said, why don't you run it on other platforms that are alive, right? So we all know the different platforms, ChatGPT and Grok and, Claude and so on. So I said, as many different platforms as you can get things on, could you run that? And he ran, and each of them actually gave a very different number. And it's not, I'm not just talking about a number. In fact, each of them listed the rationale or the whole description of why they were grading the way they were grading. And there was no consistency between them. So if you really start using these platforms as is, right, they're not tuned for the type of information we are looking for or we are working with, right? And in fact, because our verification plan had references to DDRs and UVMs and some of the other interfaces and so on, it was actually giving us information about, oh, this was mentioned but not fully utilized, or this one will have deficiency in testing. And so it understood quite a bit. And yet, if you take all of these platforms and you use one of them as your plan of record, you're going to come up with incomplete information. So two different learnings out of this, right? One is try it on multiple platforms. But the other part is all these things need to mature. They are not quite ready for commercial use or production use, right? But if you don't use it, you are leaving a lot of efficiency on the table. Because just by getting all those different data, and I'll tell you, one of them gave 62%, another gave 68%, another gave 87%, another gave 90%. Okay, that's a fairly wide range. And if it was 62 and 65, and if everybody fall within that, I would consider that as margin of error.
Did you ever try running it twice on the same model?
Well, maybe you don't keep the temperature context. Yeah, if you don't keep the temperature.
You played on
This is not vehicles.
The point is that the maturity is not there yet, and yet it gave a lot of detailed information that our engineers said, well, this is actually very useful. We are now improving the quality. And so I think the other comment that I wanted to add in